Bang.
Is he snapping her? All right. Hey, what are we up to? What number are we at?
God, that's a good question. I got to check it tomorrow, Pete. I think it might be 179.
Wow. All right.
But
cool.
I'll confirm it for you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because tomorrow will be, of course, Wednesday. We do the show Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern time for now.
Yeah.
Some announcements coming up.
Yep.
But you are tuned in to the Rebel's Edge, folks. I'm John Najarian. He is Pete Najarian in the blue. And no, we are not twins. It would have been a gestation period longer than 3 elephants, I think, Pete.
Shit,
or at least 2 elephants.
That's a 6-year gestation. That would be brutal.
That would be a long one.
That could be painful.
Jared, and painful. Jared is handling all of the graphics that you see dancing across the screen.
Oh, no.
Oh, there you go. See, the bull took out the bear. The bear was doing some spin move, and the bull wasn't having any of it. Sort of like John Wick.
That bear's having a hard time, John.
Oh, yeah. All the bears out there are not happy. And that goes from SoFi that we talked about yesterday to Beyond Meat, which we also spoke of. And those calls were only up, I think, 500%, Pete. Beyond Meat calls were under $1 on Thursday last week. We cited it with Charles Payne on Making Money with Charles Payne on the Fox Business Channel. And they only went to $5 plus.
That is making money. That's what we like to call making money. And I hope Charles knows that was making some money as well. I know he does.
Yep. He is a big fan of making money, Charles is. Sure. All right. Let's talk about the macro minute. We'll try to limit it to a minute, folks. And this part is going to be easy. I'm happy, like the rest of you, that we've seen prices come down. But if you take a look at the graphs that Jared is going to be putting up here, the top graph is the food price index since January of 21. The bottom graph is the real wage, hourly wage pay. And as you can see, they're both kind of going in the wrong direction, Pete. Prices going up and hourly wages, real hourly wages coming down.
Yeah, you've got the lowest levels in 2 years, but you look at the core inflation number, John, and that actually was a little bit of a leap to the upside of about 0.4%. So to your point, you always want to look at these numbers with a little bit more of a keen eye to see exactly what's laying underneath there. So I think there's a lot there, but we know a lot of different things for sure going forward. And right now, John, we're looking at what the expectations are from the Fed. That's something that CME has given us a little bit of a heads up on, I guess, as we go into the fantastic futures.
That's right. Fantastic futures.
Fantastic futures.
Nat gas, Pete. I could have done any of the energy trades. They were getting spanked so hard yesterday, a little bit of a comeback. But the thing that stood out to me about nat gas, and you've called it a couple times, as it moves back through $2.34 per million British thermal unit. It was 417 to begin the year. So this has come down rather dramatically, and now it's fighting its way right at resistance back and forth. What do you have, Pete?
Yeah, in the last 2 weeks, John, I think it's really important that people keep an eye on things, and we've had a nice big run out of copper over the last couple of weeks. Now, that's coming off of some severe lows right now as well, but take a look at the material space. Material space over the last couple of weeks up almost 9%. So just always know, you always want to have at least an eye on what's going on across multiple sectors. And the material sector is starting to really get a lot of heat, and we've seen a lot of unusual option activity within that sector, a lot of individual names.
Well, now we're going to dive in, folks, to stocks, and we're going to let you know whether or not we buy, sell, or hold them as well, because that's how we play. Oracle, Pete, the stock hit a new all-time high of $123.99 today. I think for many of us, it kind of quietly got there, Pete, because yeah, we knew it was moving up, but it wasn't making these outlandish moves like some of the other stocks have and some of the AI stocks. But wait, Oracle did mention artificial intelligence in their call, Pete, and they said the impact of demand on AI products, and Oracle, of course, big software giant, they're going to get some upside out of this one.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And John, quite honestly, this is one of those names when we hear the rest of the world saying it's narrow, there's only 6 stocks. That's a bunch of bull crap. There's been a lot more participation, especially in the last 2 weeks, maybe even stretch it out to a month, maybe even say a couple of months. All you've got to do is go back. Oracle, by the way, it's up like 48% year to date, John. So this is not just the 52-week highs that we had hit today, or the all-time highs that we've hit today as well. But when you look at the numbers that they were able to put up, I mean, the earnings were up about 8%, revenue's up about 17%, cloud revenue up 23% across the board. And then you look at the fundamentals of this company, they traded a 20 PE and they had got an incredible amount of free cash flow. There is everything that you would want in a market like this happening right now with Oracle. And we've seen some unusual option activity that gave some nice tips in the last week or so.
Yep. Take a look at that one, folks. Oracle, and look at the prices, because what we do when we cite unusual activity for our subscribers is we have the date on there and it's time stamped, because a lot of people go, well, what's the timestamp? Well, there you know, and we can show you and swear out on a stack of Bibles that that's when it hit. And we've got several thousand clients that could also say, yep, I was in that trade. Well, it turns out also that the people like to be able to look back, and that's what I've done there. I've pulled up several of the Oracle trades that hit, and look at the price of the stock when some of those were hitting. That's why you're seeing such an outrageous return on these trades. So again, go to marketrebellion.com/bang and get a BOGO there. Buy 1 month, get 1 month free. We'll talk about it again at the end of the show, guys, but that's where you could go. And of course, we do love anything that's a 10X. And this was a 10X.
Love it.
All right, let's hit Netflix. Really interesting here, because a group called Athena that tracks all kinds of activity in the underlying stock and so forth was commenting on Netflix. It hit a new 52-week high, 436 a share. They say 70,000 new subs were hitting per day in the first 4 days of the month. That is pretty amazing. And it goes right to what Pete has said for years, and I've agreed with, which is when these guys stop sharing passwords, it's going to jump to the upside. And indeed it has.
Oh, it's made an absolutely extraordinary move, John. But this is a move also very much like Oracle, where it's been going on for a while. I was just taking a look over the last year, John, it's up 141%. Apple over the last year is up 33%. Now, year to date, they're about even. But you can see exactly what we're talking about here with this sharing. And that is absolutely hitting the bottom line. Hey, not so bad when you've got free cash flow of about 17 billion or so. Not so bad. And then you look at some of the new revenue things that they're talking about, John, that they've already been implementing with sports and other things. So there's a lot to unpack here. Companies made an incredible run. I don't necessarily think it's over, because this sharing thing was a big deal and they took forever to work it out. But now that they are, those numbers do not lie. That's the signups, and that's exactly the growth that they needed. That's phenomenal for Netflix, and I think there's more room to the upside still.
I agree. I will be surprised if we don't see higher numbers still, Pete. Now, granted, since we've thrown that number out there that Athena shared with us, 70,000 new signups per day, that's going to tail off.
Yeah.
And I guess people might use that as a time to maybe take some profits, but this is profit to the bottom line, because it doesn't cost them anything hardly to get an additional 70,000 a day in the door, Pete. But think of it, folks, that is found money for any of these streamers to get that kind of throughput into their coffers. All right, let's talk about Dave and Buster's, Pete. It trades under the symbol PLAY, P-L-A-Y. And they had an investor day, and they say that they clearly identified a pathway to $1 billion of adjusted EBITDA at their investor day. they said conservatively, this reflects a 50% haircut to the midpoint of their $430 to $600 million target here, Pete. Wow. Dave and Buster's, I can't remember the last time I was in one. I have been in there, though. It's like video games for adults along with food. And I guess it's kind of a singles place, Pete. And of course, kids and families. But I think a lot of people might, a lot of social clubs might go into these things. And so maybe that plays into it as well.
Yeah, well, they did talk about food and beverage and the high demands that they were getting out of that, John. When you look at what their numbers were, the Q1 sales were record numbers. They were up 32%. Then you look at the earnings at 145 a year ago, they're 135. They're doing what they need to do. They even improved a lot on their margins, because even with things kind of coming back down, maybe just a little bit, they've been raising prices and people have not complained. So with that, those margins are starting to get a nice little bit of a move for them as well. Across the board, John, these guys are doing things right in the environment. And is it a bit of a trade down potentially? Maybe, because instead of going somewhere else, now this is a fun place, like you said, very social, and more adults going there. I think that's actually something very good for the bottom line.
Absolutely. So is this one, Pete, that you'd kind of hang out in for a while?
I think I would, John. And here's the other reason. We're on a theme right now that's going like this. How much is your short interest? And it's about 10% for these guys. You get a little bit of a squeeze on a 10% short, that starts to move things even a little bit faster to the upside. So yeah, I think we're still in that environment where people are looking for, if they can find quality, great, but they're still looking for shorts to squeeze as well. You got both. That's a no-brainer.
Well, since you're using a little Carl Iconism, Pete, a no-brainer.
It's a no-brainer.
Let's talk about Patterson Energy. Carl's been involved in the past in some of these energy names, Pete. I don't know that he's in this one or NEX, N-E-X, but Patterson Energy allegedly, this is according to the Wall Street Journal. This is not just off of Reddit or Twitter. This is the Wall Street Journal, folks, saying that they've reportedly held and are holding merger talks. They say it may not result in a deal, but when you look at the 1 year of Patterson, it's up 9% today. NEX is up pretty good today too. I think there might be something going on here, Pete, in the fracking space. How about you?
Yeah, it seems that way. And this is the number 2 fracker there is as far as providing for the fracking. I mean, it's pretty interesting to see what these guys do. It's up today pretty substantially, as you pointed out. That being said, if you look at a 52-week high low, this thing is not that far off the lows, John. So in the environment we're in, and maybe the possibilities of what they might want to do into the future, I could see some sort of activity. You can understand why there is at least conversations going on. It's going to be an interesting one to track. I'm not sure that I'm ready to jump on board on this one just yet, because I do think, and it didn't sound all that promising, but I do think some sort of a merger, some sort of partnership, some sort of anything would be a positive, but it didn't sound to me like they were convinced that that was ready to happen just now.
Yeah, I think the fact that they're in talks at all, Pete, tells you that at least the leadership of both companies is probably looking around saying, we're not really sellers and we might get gobbled up by somebody like ExxonMobil. So maybe we're better off merging and getting a higher price if indeed energy prices stay down at these levels, because anywhere around the 70 level, folks, yeah, they're profitable. But if this thing was 80, 85, we're talking significantly more money to both these companies. All right, let's talk, Pete, about NBA playoffs. Woo! I know that you're going to comment on your Heat. And this was just a fabulous performance by the Denver Nuggets, though, unfortunately for Heat fans.
And how about that crowd? And they stood around forever. I couldn't help it. Had to get up early this morning, John. I didn't care. I stayed up last night. I watched the entire thing. I watched a lot of the things, that the post game and all that, the interviews and the MVP. Let's just talk about this MVP for just 1 second. Jokic is unbelievable, and we've been talking about that. He's a combination of Larry Bird and Magic Johnson. Larry Bird, because he's a little awkward. He's not all that, he's not fluid, that's for sure. And he's not fast. That's another thing. But he gets away with it somehow. And then when you look at what he's been able to do from a passing perspective and all the assists that he gets because of it, It's unbelievable. And it's pretty magical. It's like Magic Johnson. I mean, he makes passes that are fun. I think it keeps people entertained. But the reality is, John, they were too much for the Heat. The Heat just could not match them. Here was the thing. The Heat could do pretty well against teams when they were shooting threes at the level that they were. It's why they were an 8 seed, and they actually got through the entire thing all the way to the finals, because they didn't have too many stumbles along the way with shooting 3-pointers. Turns out that they really stumbled yesterday, but so did the Nuggets. So why is it that the Nuggets actually won this game? Well, it comes down to rebounds. They had 57 to 44. When it's all said and done, that's where the work gets done, right? I mean, that gives you that many more opportunities than your opposition. But the most incredible thing to me is this. When you look at Jokic, he had number 1 in points scored, number 1 in rebounds, number 1 in assists. I don't know that anybody has ever done the triple that way, John, but they did. He did. And the Nuggets, I'll tell you, with Gordon and Murray and Jokic and some of the role players, if they can keep this team together, I see no reason why they can't start to build a little bit of a dynasty there. Now, obviously, we'll have to see, but they did it in the regular season as well. So this is a team that absolutely has figured it out, and if they can keep them together, I think they got a few more championships, at least in their eyes, looking out into the future.
Pete, you and I are data guys, and you threw out some data there about the threes. Let me sort of augment that, if I could. They shot just 34% from the field. That's not the threes. That's from the field. The threes last night were 9 of 35. Do the math real quick. It's under 26%. Now, you know what they shot from beyond the arc in the first 3 rounds of the playoffs until they got here, Pete? 39%. That's the NBA. So you went from shooting 39% threes. Yeah, I was just shooting outside, and I'm not going to put myself in Jimmy Butler's category, of course. But I was hitting probably close to 25%, Pete, without in my face and all the other things, of course. But to fall from nearly 40%, like I say, an NBA high, to all the way down to 25, that's why they lost, as much as you cited the stat about the rebounds. You can't get out rebounded like that without filling up the basket from 3. And instead of filling it up, they put a bunch of bombs up that missed.
I think they put a piece of plywood over the rim that they were shooting at, John, because, 17% from 3-point land is not a good thing. All right, next we're going to go to Major League Baseball. Now, here, I know we've done this before, but I just got to do it again with this payroll thing, John, because I find it so fascinating, so amazing, and I actually kind of like it, even though I'm a former player, in NFL and all that type of thing, and so are you. It's just amazing to me to see this. Tampa is the number 28 team out of 30 as far as payroll, and they are leading in the American League East. Baltimore trails them, and they're number 29 out of 30 teams at $60 million, by the way. Miami is 24 of 30 teams, and they're just behind the trailing the Braves, the Atlanta Braves, who pay a lot of money for their guys. Pittsburgh, 27th out of 30. So where am I getting with this? Well, I did it again. $297 million for those. That's what the payrolls are. Well, I can tell you this. The Mets have $60 million more just alone as a team than all of these teams that are either leading or in second place in their divisions. So it just shows you that money doesn't always work, and it doesn't always mean you're going to have success. So it's something that you want to keep an eye on. And I'll tell you what, it's really, really interesting from a financial perspective to see just how different this is this year and last year to that, point in what they're doing. I got one other one for you though, John. Ted Williams. It's been 82 years since his bat was batting over 400 for the season. Now, we're not through the season. We're only through the early games, and we've got 60-plus games we played. Luis Ariz, down there in Florida, is batting .391. He's been above 400. Now, it's been 20 years since somebody at this point in the game was still hanging around that 400 mark. And it's pretty interesting, and this guy's fun to watch. He works his tail off. I actually know him a little bit, John, because He's a former Twin that was a part of a trade last year with Miami for a pitcher and another player. And now he's out down there in Florida doing an absolutely amazing job. Can the guy do it? I'm just throwing that out to you. Do you think Luis Arraez is in a position where he could continue this on and maybe challenge Ted Williams' 82-year-old record?
I think he absolutely challenged the record, Pete. And I also thought it was interesting. And I'm going to pull Ted Williams because if you look.
Well, unfortunately, John's feed is definitely breaking up. He's down in Puerto Rico, and we've seen this happen before. By the way, I have been hearing from many, many people over the last 4 or 5 days how many times their internet has gone down or it's just terrible. And I'm hearing it from a lot of guys in the financial industry. So maybe it's the draw and maybe it's the pull that we all have. But it's been very, very difficult. Everybody seems to be having internet. And I'm not just talking about down in Florida, not talking in Puerto Rico. I'm talking about everywhere. Everywhere we go, we are seeing issues with the internet. John, are you back? And let's hear if you're able to get through with any clarity here.
Well, number one, Pete, I'm sorry about that with the internet. I've been waiting for Liberty. You suck, Liberty, because in my other house here in Puerto Rico, I have Starlink. In this house up here in the north, I have Liberty Cable, and they suck donkey whatevers. But anyway, let me throw this out there, Pete. Ted Williams, if you look at the Boston at Fenway Park, there's one red seat, and it's out there in right field. And the reason that seat is red is because that seat was the furthest home run ever hit in that park, 502 feet. And that was allegedly Ted Williams. I say allegedly because even Big Poppy, Pete, says there's no way a man could hit it that far. I've never even done that in batting practice. So just to throw it out there. Quickly, because I don't want to get us too far over time. I think when you look at payroll, the other interesting thing to me, Pete, is some of these teams, like for instance, the Mets, 257 million. They got 47 million in injured reserve, people that can't play that they're paying, 34 million in retained, and buried 10 million. So I'll have to dig into that buried stat because it sounds like it should sort of be in the retained category. But when you look at actual payroll is versus 26-man payroll is, it's $80 million more, $344 million. So in other words, that's double what the Tampa Bay Rays are spending, Pete, to your point, and why it might even be triple what the Tampa Bay Rays are spending because they don't have all that many folks that are on injured reserve or that are buried.
And the last thing I'd say is this. Tampa is right now on pace with about a 70% win percentage. So pretty amazing what they're doing with the payroll that they've got. That's at the very bottom at 28 of 30 teams. They're right there pushing on the bottom. And yet look at the success that they're having. It's pretty amazing.
Yep. Well, we appreciate you joining us, folks. We will be back tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern time. We'll have more trades for you, more macro minute and fantastic futures. Remember, you can always go to marketrebellion.com/bang. That's marketrebellion.com/bang for more, because what's more? Well, a bang gets you a BOGO. Buy 1 month, get 1 month free. Buy one, get one. So that is our best offer, folks. I hope you take advantage of it. Lots more great trades coming tomorrow. Bang.